He was a billionaire CEO who thought his heart had frozen long ago. Until one snowy night, his little girl whispered, "Daddy, her baby is freezing." What started as a simple act of kindness soon turned into a life-changing moment. A night that would melt even the coldest heart and rewrite his destiny forever. But what he discovered next, no one was ready for. The night air was bitterly cold. Snowflakes drifted across the windshield as Ethan drove through the quiet streets of the city. His daughter, Lily, sat in the back seat, bundled in a pink blanket, humming softly to her favorite song. The world outside looked like glass, frozen, fragile, silent. Streetlights flickered on the empty sidewalks, their glow stretching across the snow like fading hope. Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The day had been long. Meetings, deadlines, endless calls. The life of a CEO who had everything except peace. He was heading home, thinking of nothing but warmth and rest. Then Lily's small voice broke the stillness. "Daddy, her baby is freezing." Ethan's heart jolted. He looked to where her tiny finger pointed, near the bus stop under the dim streetlight. A woman sat on the frozen bench, clutching a bundle of cloth to her chest. Her hair was damp with snow, her lips pale, her eyes closed as she held her baby close. Ethan stopped the car without thinking. The cold hit his face as soon as he opened the door. The sound of the wind roared in his ears. He ran toward her, his shoes sinking into the snow. "Miss, are you all right?" he asked, his voice trembling more from fear than the cold. The woman looked up slowly. Her eyes were filled with exhaustion and fear, yet she held the baby tighter, as if afraid he might be taken away. The baby whimpered softly, a sound so faint it barely rose above the wind. Ethan felt something inside him twist, a raw ache he had not felt since his wife's death years ago. He took off his coat and wrapped it around the woman and her child. Lily stepped out of the car, holding her small blanket. She walked over and gently placed it over the baby. The woman's eyes widened, tears freezing on her cheeks. "Please," she whispered. "I did not know where else to go." Ethan looked around. The streets were empty. The city that never slept had turned its back on her. He could feel the weight of that silence pressing against his chest. The baby shivered again, the sound weak, fragile, terrifying. Ethan scooped the child into his arms, feeling the chill through the thin cloth. The baby's skin was icy, his breath shallow. He felt panic rising, a fear sharper than any business crisis he had ever faced. He turned to Lily. "Get in the car, sweetheart," he said softly. Lily nodded, her eyes wide, her voice small. Ethan helped the woman to her feet. Her legs trembled, her hands clutching his arm for balance. Snow kept falling, covering the footprints they left behind. As he guided her to the car, Ethan could hear his heart pounding louder than the wind. When they reached the car, the warmth of the heater felt like life returning. The baby let out a faint cry, a sound so pure and desperate it made Lily start to cry too. Ethan's throat tightened. He turned to the woman. "What is your name?" he asked quietly. She hesitated, her voice breaking. "My name is Sarah," she said. She looked down at her baby. "He is Noah." Ethan nodded, staring at the child wrapped in his coat. He felt something shift inside him, a decision, unspoken but certain. The snow outside grew heavier, but inside the car, something warm began to take hold. A feeling he had not known in years, purpose. And as the city disappeared behind a curtain of white, Ethan knew this night would change everything. Because sometimes, salvation does not come from success. It comes from compassion. And sometimes, the coldest nights reveal the warmest hearts. Ethan kept driving through the storm, his hands gripping the steering wheel as if it were the only thing anchoring him to reality. The windshield wipers fought against the heavy snow, pushing away the frozen flakes that kept trying to bury their way in. Beside him, Sarah sat silently, her eyes fixed on the baby in her lap. Little Noah's breaths were shallow but steady now, his tiny fingers wrapped weakly around the edge of Lily's pink blanket. Lily sat quietly in the back seat, watching them with a mixture of curiosity and concern. The car's heater hummed softly, filling the silence with a low, comforting sound. Ethan glanced at Sarah again. Her clothes were still damp, her hair tangled, her face pale and tired. She looked fragile, but there was a strength in her eyes that told a different story. He cleared his throat. "There's a shelter not far from here," he said softly. "I can take you there." Sarah looked up, her eyes reflecting the passing streetlights. "I tried," she whispered. "They said there were no beds left." Ethan's stomach tightened. He had seen that kind of hopelessness before. Not in the boardrooms he ruled, but in the mirror after his wife passed. He nodded slowly, thinking. "Then you're coming with us," he said. "At least for tonight." Sarah shook her head immediately. "I cannot impose, sir. You have your daughter, your life. I'll be fine." Ethan gave a quiet, almost bitter smile. "You were sitting on a bench in the snow," he said gently. "That's not fine." Sarah looked down, her hand brushing against the baby's cheek. Tears gathered in her eyes, but she blinked them away. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice barely audible. Lily leaned forward from the back seat, her small voice breaking the heavy silence. "Daddy, can I stay in my room?" Ethan looked at her through the rearview mirror. Her innocent question melted something inside him. He smiled softly. "We'll see, sweetheart." The drive home felt longer than usual. Snow coated the city like a blanket, hiding every flaw, every corner, every pain. When they finally reached Ethan's house, the motion sensor lights flicked on, glowing warmly against the falling snow. It was a large modern home, glass walls and clean lines, but despite its size, it had always felt empty. Until tonight. Ethan helped Sarah out of the car. Her legs were stiff, her movements slow, but she refused to let go of Noah. As soon as they stepped inside, warmth enveloped them. The soft hum of the fireplace, the faint scent of cedar and vanilla. Lily hurried to the couch, grabbing a throw blanket and laying it across the cushions. "You can sit here," she said brightly. Sarah hesitated, glancing around the large room. It was the kind of space that looked more like a photograph than a home, spotless, elegant, cold. Now, with her standing there, dripping snow and exhaustion, it felt real for the first time. Ethan took Noah gently from her arms and looked down at the small, delicate face. The baby's eyes fluttered open for a moment, a faint spark of life flickering in the dim light. He handed the child back carefully. "I'll make something warm to eat," he said. Sarah tried to protest, but her stomach answered before her words did. Ethan gave a small nod and disappeared into the kitchen. The sound of clinking dishes and the faint hiss of boiling water filled the air. Sarah looked down at Lily, who had taken a seat beside her. "You have a very kind heart," she said softly. Lily smiled shyly. "Daddy says we should always help people who need it." Sarah nodded slowly, her eyes glistening again. "Your daddy is a good man." Lily looked toward the kitchen. "He is, but sometimes he forgets how good he is." Sarah's chest tightened. There was so much truth in the little girl's words that she could barely respond. Ethan returned a few minutes later with 2 steaming cups of soup. He handed one to Sarah, who took it with trembling hands. The warmth seeped through her fingers, bringing color back to her cheeks. They ate in silence for a few minutes, the crackle of the fireplace filling the room. Finally, Ethan spoke. "Where's home, Sarah?" She looked up slowly, her eyes clouded. "Nowhere," she said simply. "We had an apartment, but when I lost my job, the rent, it just became impossible. Noah got sick and I couldn't." Her voice faltered. Ethan said nothing. He just listened, his jaw tightening as the story unfolded. "I've been trying to find work again," she continued. "But every door closes before I even reach it." She looked at her baby, who was sleeping now, his breathing soft and peaceful. "I just wanted him to be warm tonight." Ethan looked at her, his heart heavy. He thought about the empire he had built, the glass towers, the meetings, the endless numbers, all the success in the world, and yet he had never felt as human as he did now. "You can stay here," he said quietly. Sarah's eyes widened. "I can't accept that," she said quickly. "You're not accepting," he said. "I'm offering." There was something in his tone that silenced her protest, a strength, but also a quiet kindness. She nodded slowly. "Just until I find a way," she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly. "That's all right." Lily clapped her hands softly. "Yay." We have guests. Sarah laughed quietly for the first time that night. It was a fragile sound, but real, a small spark of warmth breaking through the cold. Ethan stood and glanced at the clock. It's late, he said. You both need rest. He led them to the guest room, a space that had not been used since his wife's parents had visited years ago. As Sarah laid Noah down on the bed, she turned to Ethan. Thank you, she said. I will repay you somehow. Ethan shook his head. You already did, he said softly. You reminded me what really matters. Sarah looked at him, confused, but before she could speak, he smiled faintly and walked away. That night, as the snow fell heavier outside, Ethan stood by the window of his study. The world beyond was white and silent. He thought about his wife, her laughter, her warmth, her absence. He thought about Lily, growing up without a mother, and about Sarah, holding on to hope with frozen hands. For the first time in years, the walls of his house did not feel so empty. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the frosted windows. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world sparkling with new light. Ethan walked into the kitchen to find Sarah cooking breakfast with Lily. Laughter filled the air, soft, real, alive. He paused, watching them. Sarah turned, catching his gaze, her eyes bright but shy. Good morning, she said. I hope you do not mind. She wanted to help. Ethan smiled. I don't mind at all, he said. It smells wonderful. Lily giggled. Daddy, Sarah makes better pancakes than you. Ethan pretended to frown. Impossible, he said with a grin. The room filled with laughter again, and for the first time in a very long time, it felt like home. Outside, the snow continued to fall, soft, gentle, unhurried, like a promise that even the coldest nights can give birth to the warmest mornings. And somewhere deep in Ethan's heart, a new story began to write itself, one of kindness, courage, and unexpected family. Because sometimes love does not knock. Sometimes it arrives in the middle of a snowstorm, holding a freezing baby and a second chance. Ethan sat at the breakfast table, sipping his coffee slowly. The warmth of the mug seeped into his palms, but it was the laughter echoing through the room that truly thawed something inside him. Lily was showing Sarah how to draw little hearts with syrup on pancakes. Noah lay in a small cradle nearby, cooing softly, his cheeks flushed with life again. Ethan could not help but smile. For the first time in years, his house was filled with sound, soft voices, quiet laughter, the gentle hum of a family's morning. Sarah looked up at him, catching his gaze. Thank you for letting us stay, she said quietly. Ethan shook his head. You do not need to thank me, he replied. You needed help. That is all that matters. She smiled faintly, her eyes filled with both gratitude and disbelief. Most people do not stop, she said. They see someone struggling and just keep driving. Ethan's expression darkened slightly. I used to be one of them, he said. Sarah tilted her head. What changed? He looked toward Lily, who was now giggling as she tried to flip a pancake too early, splattering batter across the counter. That little girl, he said softly. She changed everything. Sarah followed his gaze, her eyes softening. She reminds me of Hope, she whispered. Ethan nodded. Hope, he repeated. That is something I had forgotten existed. The sound of a knock at the door broke the moment. Ethan stood, wiping his hands on a towel. He opened the door to find a delivery man standing on the porch, a large brown box in his arms. Delivery from Mr. Ethan Hayes, the man said. Ethan nodded, signed for it, and brought the box inside. Lily's eyes widened. Is it a surprise, Daddy? Ethan smiled. Maybe it is, he said. Why don't we find out together? He set the box on the table and cut the tape open. Inside was a brand new baby carrier, soft blankets, and a few tiny clothes wrapped neatly in tissue paper. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. I did not order this, she said. Ethan smiled gently. I did, he replied. You and Noah will need these. Her eyes filled with tears. Ethan, I cannot accept. He stopped her with a quiet gesture. It is not about accepting, he said softly. It is about letting someone care. She stood there for a long moment, unable to speak. Lily broke the silence with a bright grin. Now Noah can be warm all the time. Sarah laughed through her tears. Yes, she said, her voice trembling. He can. The rest of the day moved gently, like the calm after a storm. Ethan worked from his study, but every so often he caught himself glancing toward the living room, where Sarah sat reading softly to Noah and Lily built towers of blocks nearby. He realized that the sound of their voices had become a rhythm he did not want to lose. When evening came, Sarah stood by the window, watching the city lights come alive. The sky was painted in shades of amber and silver. Ethan joined her, holding 2 cups of tea. She accepted one with a quiet smile. "The city looks so peaceful from here," she said. "It is," Ethan replied, "but it rarely feels that way." Sarah nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Sometimes peace is not about the place," she said softly. "It is about the people we share it with." Ethan looked at her, the light from the fireplace reflecting in her eyes. "You sound like someone who has lived through too much," he said gently. She smiled sadly. "Maybe," she whispered, "but I have also learned that life gives us unexpected gifts." Their eyes met, a quiet, lingering moment that said more than words could. Lily's voice broke the silence from a hallway. "Daddy! Sarah! Come look!" They both turned. Lily stood by the door, pointing outside. Through the window, they could see the first flakes of snow falling again, slow and soft, glimmering in the light. "It is snowing again," she said, spinning with joy. Sarah laughed, the sound full and free this time. Ethan watched her, the way her laughter filled the air, the way her eyes sparkled when she looked at her son. He felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. Not pity, not duty, but something deeper. The next few days passed like a quiet dream. Sarah helped around the house, cooking, cleaning, reading bedtime stories to Lily. Noah grew stronger each day, his laughter echoing through the rooms. Ethan began to look forward to coming home, to the sound of warmth waiting behind the door. But one morning, he found the guest room empty. The bed was neatly made. The cradle was gone. On the table, a folded note lay beside a cup of tea. His heart sank as he picked it up. The handwriting was soft, graceful, trembling. "Ethan, thank you for saving us. You gave us more than shelter. You gave us dignity. I cannot take more than I deserve. I found a job at a bakery across town. Please tell Lily that Noah will always remember her blanket. With gratitude, Sarah." Ethan stared at the letter for a long time. The house was silent again, painfully silent. He sat down slowly, the weight of the moment pressing against him. Lily came running down the stairs, still in her pajamas. "Daddy, where is Sarah? Where is Noah?" Ethan swallowed hard. "They had to go, sweetheart," he said gently. "Sarah found a job." Lily's face fell. "But they said they would stay for Christmas," she whispered. Ethan knelt and held her close. "Sometimes people have to leave," he said softly. "But that does not mean they are gone from our hearts." Lily hugged him tight. Her small voice trembled. "Can we visit them?" Ethan smiled faintly. "I hope so," he said. "I truly hope so." That night, after putting Lily to bed, Ethan stepped outside. The city lights flickered under the snow. He looked up at the sky, thinking about Sarah, her strength, her kindness, her quiet courage. And he knew this was not the end. Some people cross our paths for a reason, he thought. They remind us of who we are meant to be. He walked back inside, turned off the lights, and stood by the window. Outside, the snow kept falling, endless, soft, forgiving. And somewhere, across the sleeping city, he hoped Sarah and Noah were warm, safe, and smiling. Because sometimes the greatest miracles begin not with grand gestures, but with a simple act of stopping to care.